For 8 years, I stayed silent to save my brothers from a witch's curse. One word spoken, and they'd remain wolves forever. So I became invisible, a mute servant in the Bloodmoor Pack, scrubbing floors for the Alpha King who didn't know I was his fated mate. But the night I screamed his name, everything shattered. This is the story of how one forbidden word changed 2 kingdoms forever. Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. Chapter 1. The Weight of Silence. The soup was burning. I could smell it from across the kitchen, that acrid scent of vegetables turning to char at the bottom of the iron pot. My hands moved faster, scrubbing the stone floor with a brush that had worn down to nubs, but I kept one eye on the hearth. If the head cook discovered ruined soup, she'd blame me whether I'd been anywhere near it or not. That's what happened when you couldn't defend yourself with words. Every mistake in the castle kitchens became mine by default. The other servants had learned years ago that I couldn't protest, and they used that knowledge like a weapon. But I didn't care about their petty cruelties anymore. I'd survived worse. Much worse. The kitchen door slammed open, and I flinched despite myself. Rowan Bloodmoor, the Alpha King, strode through the servants' entrance like he owned every inch of air in the room. Which, technically, he did. He owned the castle, the Packlands, the forests beyond, and everyone who lived within his territory, including me. His presence filled the space immediately, that overwhelming aura of dominance that made every Omega instinctively lower their gaze. I kept my eyes on the floor, my brush moving in steady circles, but my entire body was aware of him. The way his boots struck the stone, the controlled power in his movements, the scent of pine and winter that clung to him like a second skin. He was searching for something, his gaze sweeping the kitchen with sharp intensity. "Where's my chief advisor?" His voice was rough, commanding, the kind of voice that expected immediate answers. The head cook stammered something about the advisor being in the war room. Rowan's jaw tightened, frustration clear in the set of his shoulders. He turned to leave, and that's when it happened. His boot caught the edge of my water bucket, sending it crashing across the stone floor in a cascade of dirty water. The liquid rushed toward the hearth, toward the fire that kept the entire kitchen running. If it reached the flames, we'd have no way to cook tonight's feast. The visiting dignitaries would go hungry. The pack would see it as an insult. And I would be blamed for all of it. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I lunged forward, my hands grabbing for the bucket, trying desperately to right it before more water spilled. But I was too slow, too clumsy, and my momentum carried me directly into the Alpha King's path. We collided hard. His hand shot out instinctively, catching my arm before I could fall, and the contact sent a shock through my entire system. Mate? The word slammed into my consciousness like a physical blow. No, this couldn't be happening. Not now. Not him. Not when I'd spent 8 years carefully building walls around every emotion, every connection, every dangerous feeling that could make me forget why I had to stay silent. But there it was, undeniable and terrifying. The mate bond, blazing to life between us like lightning in a summer storm. His fingers tightened on my arm, and I forced myself to look up. Rowan was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read, his silver eyes wide, with something that looked like shock. Could he feel it too? The bond that was supposed to be rare, sacred, once in a lifetime? His lips parted as if to speak. But then his gaze dropped to my throat, to the scar that marked me as damaged. The moment shattered. His hand released me like I'd burned him, and the familiar mask of cold authority slid back over his features. "Watch where you're going," he said, his voice flat and dismissive. Then he was gone, leaving me kneeling in a puddle of dirty water, my heart racing, and my carefully constructed silence feeling more fragile than ever. Chapter 2. The Witch's Bargain. 8 years ago, I'd been someone different entirely. Celine Frostmoor, youngest daughter of the Frostmoor Pack's beta family, blessed with a voice that could sing the old songs, and a future that looked bright. I'd had 6 older brothers who spoiled me rotten, parents who loved me fiercely, and a life that felt safe. Then the witch came to our borders. She called herself Morgana, and she offered my father a bargain. Protection for our pack in exchange for sanctuary within our lands. My father, always too trusting, had agreed. Within 3 months, Morgana had poisoned my mother, framed my father for treason, and convinced the Alpha that our entire family was plotting rebellion. The night they came for us, my brothers fought like demons to give me time to escape. I was 14 years old, crouched in the cold storage cellar, listening to the sounds of battle above. My oldest brother Kai had shoved me through the trapdoor, with orders to run and never look back. But I couldn't run. Not when I could hear them dying. Not when I could feel the bond between siblings stretching and snapping with each loss. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I found Morgana in the chaos, cornered her in our family's burning home, and begged. I offered her anything, everything, if she would spare my brothers' lives. She'd smiled, cold and calculating, and told me the price. My voice in exchange for their survival. They would live, but they would live as wolves, trapped in their animal forms until I could break the curse. The only way to break it was to remain silent for 8 years while weaving them each a shirt from thornweed, a plant so toxic it burned the skin to touch. 1 word spoken before the task was complete, and they would remain wolves forever. I'd accepted without hesitation. Morgana performed her spell right there in the burning ruins of my home, and I felt my voice tear away from me like a piece of my soul being ripped out. My brothers transformed in front of my eyes, their human bodies twisting and reshaping into massive wolves, with eyes that still held their human awareness. They'd tried to protect me even in their cursed forms, surrounding me as Morgana laughed and vanished into the smoke. The Frostmoor Pack found us hours later. They saw 6 wild wolves surrounding a mute girl covered in ash and blood, and they drew their own conclusions. The wolves were driven into the forests. I was taken as an Omega servant, too damaged to be worth anything but manual labor. No one connected me to the disgraced Frostmoor beta family. No one looked at me closely enough to see past the scar on my throat where Morgana's magic had burned me. For 8 years I'd scrubbed floors, carried water, and bled in secret as I harvested thornweed by moonlight. I'd woven 6 shirts slowly, painfully, hiding them in a hollow tree in the forest where my brothers could watch over them. They stayed close, my 6 protectors, living as rogues in the borderlands and meeting me every full moon so I could see with my own eyes that they still lived. Kai, with his silver-tipped fur. Damon, with his battle scars. Lysander, with his gentle eyes, even in wolf form. Theron, Cassius, and little Evander, who'd been only 12 when the curse took him. They were the reason I endured every humiliation, every beating. Every night I fell asleep with my hands burning from thornweed poison. 6 shirts, 8 years. Only 3 months left until the curse could be broken. Then the universe decided to complicate everything by making Rowan Bloodmoor, the Alpha King who'd unknowingly given me sanctuary in his pack, my fated mate. The same Alpha King who was betrothed to Maria Bloodwillow, daughter of the most powerful pack in the north. The same Alpha King who looked at me like I was less than nothing, just another broken Omega not worth his notice. I pressed my burning hands against the cool stone floor of the kitchen and let myself feel the full weight of the impossible situation I'd landed in. 3 months until my brothers were free. 3 months to avoid the mate bond that was already clawing at my insides, demanding I acknowledge it, claim it, complete it. 3 months to stay invisible while every instinct I had screamed at me to go to him, to tell him everything, to let him see the real me buried underneath 8 years of enforced silence. Chapter 3. The Northern Bride. Maria Bloodwillow arrived at dawn 3 days after my collision with the Alpha King, and she arrived like a conquering army, Her convoy filled the courtyard with enough carriages, guards, and servants to rival a royal procession. I watched from the kitchen window as she stepped down from her lead carriage, her auburn hair catching the morning light like fire, her emerald gown cut to showcase both her status and her figure. She was beautiful in that sharp, calculated way that powerful women often were, every gesture designed to command attention and respect. The pack members who'd gathered to greet her bowed immediately, responding to her dominant aura instinctively. Even from a distance, I could feel the weight of her presence. This was no simple pack daughter. This was an alpha female in her own right, groomed from birth to rule beside a king. Rowan met her in the courtyard, his posture formal but welcoming. I told myself I wasn't bothered by the way she touched his arm, the familiar ease between them that spoke of years of knowing each other. They'd been betrothed since childhood, a political alliance forged to unite two of the most powerful packs in the north. Everyone knew they'd be married before winter. Everyone knew Mireia would make a perfect queen, strong enough to stand beside an alpha king, cunning enough to navigate pack politics, and ruthless enough to destroy anyone who threatened their power. I had no place in that picture. I was just the mute servant girl who scrubbed floors and tried desperately not to feel the mate bond every time Rowan walked past me in the corridors. You, girl. The head cook's sharp voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. Stop gawking and get back to work. The Luna-to-be will want fresh linens in the East Wing chambers, and the feast preparations won't finish themselves. I nodded quickly and returned to my tasks, but my mind stayed on Mireia. Over the following days, I saw more of her than I wanted to. She swept through the castle like she already owned it, rearranging furniture, replacing staff, making her mark on everything she touched. The other servants whispered about her temper, the way she'd had 2 maids dismissed for minor infractions, the cold precision with which she corrected anyone who displeased her. But they also whispered with approval about her strength, her confidence, the way she made Rowan smile at dinner when court politics usually left him brooding and tense. I told myself it didn't matter, that the hollow ache in my chest every time I saw them together was just the mate bond being stubborn, refusing to accept what my rational mind already knew. Rowan Bloodmoor was not for me. He was destined for a queen, for ceremonies and alliances, and the kind of grand love story that ballads were written about. I was destined for silence, for secrets, for 3 more months of invisible suffering before I could finally break my curse and disappear with my brothers to whatever life we could rebuild. The 2 paths would never cross. The universe had played a cruel joke making us mates, but I didn't have to acknowledge it. I didn't have to let it destroy everything I'd worked for. I could endure 3 more months. I'd already endured 8 years. But the mate bond had other ideas. It grew stronger every day, that invisible thread connecting me to Rowan, whether I wanted it or not. I felt his emotions bleeding through despite my attempts to block them out. His frustration during council meetings, his carefully hidden doubt about the marriage alliance, his restless energy during the full moon when his wolf demanded to run. Worse, I started noticing things I shouldn't. The way his jaw tightened when Mireia spoke over him. The shadows under his eyes that suggested he wasn't sleeping well. The moments when he'd pause in empty corridors as if sensing something just out of reach, his head turning in my direction before he'd shake it off and continue on. Was he feeling the bond too? Could he sense me the way I sensed him? Or was I projecting my own desperate hopes onto a male who'd made it abundantly clear I was beneath his notice? I didn't know. I couldn't ask. And with only 3 months left until my brother's freedom, I couldn't afford to find out. Chapter 4. Moonlight Meetings. The full moon pulled at something deep inside me, that primal part of my wolf that the curse hadn't fully taken. I couldn't shift, couldn't transform like other wolves, but I still felt the moon's call singing through my blood. Tonight it was stronger than usual, almost painful in its intensity. I slipped out of the servants' quarters long after midnight, moving through the castle's secret passages that I'd learned over 8 years of invisible existence. The forest waited beyond the walls, dark and welcoming, and my brothers would be there. They always came during the full moon, drawn by the same lunar pull that brought shifters together across all packlands. I found them in our usual meeting place, a small clearing deep enough in the woods that no patrols would stumble upon us. 6 massive wolves emerged from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with recognition and love. Kai reached me first, his silver-tipped fur brushing against my legs as he pressed his massive head to my stomach in greeting. The others followed, each one taking their turn to scent me, to reassure themselves I was whole and safe. I sank down into their midst, burying my fingers in thick fur, letting myself feel the connection that had sustained me through 8 years of isolation. These were my pack, my real pack, the family that had sacrificed everything for me. 3 months, I mouthed, knowing they could read my lips. 3 months, and you'll be free. Kai's ears flattened, and he nudged my burned hands with his nose. The thornweed had left its mark, blistering my palms and fingers with chemical burns that never fully healed. I pulled my hands away, hiding them in my skirts. It was a small price to pay. Damon, my second oldest brother, growled softly. His wolf form bore scars from the night of the curse, raised lines where silver weapons had cut too deep. He'd been the fiercest fighter, the one who'd nearly killed 3 attackers before Morgana's spell had taken him. Now he watched me with golden eyes that held too much understanding, and I knew what he was asking without words. Was I taking care of myself? Was I eating enough? Was I safe in the Alpha King's castle? I smiled and nodded, lying through silence because they didn't need to know about the mate bond, about the impossible situation that was slowly tearing me apart from the inside. They had enough to worry about without adding my personal catastrophe to their burdens. 3 more months. Then we'd run, all 7 of us, to the wild lands where no pack could follow and no curse could touch us. The snap of a breaking branch froze us all. My brothers surged to their feet in an instant, forming a protective circle around me, their lips pulled back from fangs that could tear through flesh and bone. My heart hammered against my ribs as I strained to see what had triggered their defensive response. A figure stepped into the moonlight, and every drop of blood drained from my face. Rowan Bloodmoor stood at the edge of the clearing, his silver eyes taking in the scene with calculating intensity. 6 massive wolves surrounding a mute servant girl in the middle of the night, miles from the castle. It looked damning. It looked like exactly the kind of forbidden connection that could get me exiled or killed. His gaze locked on mine, and I saw the moment confusion shifted to anger. "What is this?" His voice was deadly quiet, his alpha authority rolling over the clearing in waves that made even my brother's wolves flatten their ears in instinctive submission. I couldn't answer, couldn't explain, couldn't do anything but stare at him with wide eyes and desperately hope he wouldn't call the guards, wouldn't destroy everything I'd worked for with one command. Kai snarled, a clear warning to back off, and Rowan's attention snapped to him. Recognition flickered across the Alpha King's features. "I know these wolves," he said slowly. "The rogue pack that's been living in the borderlands for years. The ones my patrols have orders not to engage because they've never caused trouble." His eyes narrowed. "You're connected to them. Somehow, you're connected to rogues." My silence was damning, but it was all I could offer. Rowan took a step forward, and my brothers tensed, ready to defend me even against an Alpha King. The tension in the clearing stretched tighter, one wrong move away from violence that would destroy everything. Then Rowan did something I didn't expect. He shifted his gaze back to me, and the anger in his expression cracked, revealing something raw underneath. "The mate bond," he said, his voice hoarse. "I feel it too. Every moment, every breath. It's driving me insane because you're—" He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "You can't be my mate. You can't be." And there it was. The truth neither of us had wanted to acknowledge, laid bare under the unforgiving light of the full moon. Chapter 5. Choices and Consequences. Rowan left without another word, disappearing into the forest like a ghost, but his presence lingered in the clearing long after he'd gone. My brothers whined softly, pressing closer, their anxiety palpable. They understood even in wolf form what had just happened. Our secret was compromised, and the Alpha King now knew I had connections he couldn't explain. Worse, he knew about the mate bond, that undeniable pull that was supposed to be sacred, but felt more like a curse stacked on top of an existing curse. I pressed my forehead to Kai's shoulder and tried not to let despair overwhelm me. 3 months. I just needed 3 more months of secrecy. 3 more months to finish the shirts. 3 more months before everything could finally end. But Rowan Bloodmoor had never been the kind of alpha who let mysteries remain unsolved. He came to find me the next morning, catching me alone in the herb garden where I was gathering ingredients for the kitchen. His approach was silent, predatory, the walk of a wolf who'd been tracking prey. I froze with my hands full of rosemary sprigs, my heart racing as he stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You're going to explain," he said, his voice low and controlled. "I don't care if you can't speak. You're going to find a way to make me understand what's happening here." I shook my head frantically, backing away, but he followed. His hand shot out and caught my wrist, gentle but unyielding, and the skin-to-skin contact sent electricity racing up my arm. The mate bond roared to life between us, demanding acknowledgement, demanding completion. Rowan's pupils dilated, his breath catching. "This," he growled, his thumb stroking the inside of my wrist where my pulse hammered wildly. "This is real. You feel it. I feel it. So explain to me why my fated mate is a mute omega with connections to rogues." I pulled against his grip, desperate to escape, but he held firm. His other hand rose, hovering near my face, before he seemed to think better of touching me and let it drop. "I'm betrothed," he said, and I heard genuine anguish in his voice. "In 3 months, I'm supposed to marry Maria and unite our packs. It's a treaty that's taken years to negotiate. If I break it, we risk war." I knew all of this. Everyone knew the importance of the Bloodmoor-Bloodwillow alliance, but hearing him say it, hearing him choose duty over the mate bond, still felt like a knife to the chest. I yanked my wrist free and stumbled backward, rosemary sprigs scattering across the ground. Rowan's expression twisted with frustration. "Don't run from me," he commanded, his alpha authority bleeding into the words, making my wolf instinctively want to submit. I fought against it, shaking my head harder. "Fine," he said, his jaw set. "If you won't explain, I'll find out myself. Those wolves, your connection to them, whatever secret you're hiding, I'll uncover it all." It was a threat and a promise, and I felt the walls I'd carefully built around my silence starting to crumble. That night, I returned to the hollow tree where I kept the thornweed shirts. 5 were complete, woven with 8 years of blood, sweat, and suffering. The 6th was nearly finished, only the left sleeve remaining. I worked by moonlight, my fingers bleeding as the toxic plant burned my skin, tears streaming down my face as I realized how precarious everything had become. Rowan's investigation would eventually lead him to the truth about my brothers, about the curse, about everything I'd sacrificed to keep them alive. And when that happened, what would he do? Would he see them as rogues to be eliminated? Would he force me to break my silence before the shirts were finished? Footsteps approached through the forest, too heavy to be any of my brothers. I shoved the unfinished shirt back into its hiding place and turned to find Rowan standing at the edge of the clearing, watching me with those piercing silver eyes. "You come here every night," he said. It wasn't a question. He'd been tracking me, following me, learning my patterns. "Whatever you're doing, it's important enough to risk leaving the castle in secret. Important enough to meet with rogues during the full moon." He moved closer, and I pressed back against the tree trunk, trapped. "I could command you to tell me," he continued, his voice dropping lower. "Use my alpha authority to force submission. But I won't." His hand rose again, this time cupping my cheek with a gentleness that made my chest ache. "I won't force you, but I need to understand, Selene." He knew my name. Somehow he'd learned my real name, had connected the mute servant to the disgraced Frostmoor girl who disappeared 8 years ago. The realization must have shown on my face because he nodded slowly. "Yes, I know who you are, and I'm starting to suspect I know what happened to you." Chapter 6. The Unraveling. Rowan spent the next 2 weeks systematically dismantling every secret I'd built. He questioned old pack members about the night the Frostmoor Beta family fell. He searched through archives about curses and witch magic. He stationed guards to track the rogue wolves' movements and discovered they never strayed far from the castle, as if they were watching over something precious. Or someone. I watched my carefully constructed world crumble piece by piece, helpless to stop it. The 6th shirt was almost complete, just a few more days of weaving, and my brothers would be free. But Rowan was closing in on the truth too quickly. I could see it in the way he looked at me now, with recognition and something that looked heartbreakingly like understanding. He cornered me in the castle library one afternoon, pulling me into an alcove where no one could overhear. "The witch Morgana," he said without preamble. "She placed a curse on the Frostmoor family 8 years ago. 6 brothers transformed into wolves. 1 sister who survived." His eyes searched mine, the sister who gave up her voice to save them. I nodded slowly. There was no point in denying it anymore. Relief flashed across his face, followed immediately by anguish. "You've been breaking the curse," he said. "These 8 years, you've been working to save them." Another nod. "And speaking would destroy everything. 1 word and they're trapped as wolves forever." I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to convey, "Yes, exactly, you understand." But his next words shattered my fragile hope. "I can't let rogues live on packlands," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "Even if they're your brothers. Pack law is absolute. If I make an exception, every rival pack will see it as weakness. They'll test our borders, challenge my authority. Blood will be spilled." He moved closer, his hand cupping my face again. "But if they're your family, if you're my mate, there has to be a way to protect them." I shook my head frantically. There was no way. No solution that kept everyone safe. If Rowan declared my brothers under pack protection, it would undermine his authority. If he didn't, he'd be forced to drive them away or kill them as rogues. Either choice ended in disaster. The mate bond pulsed between us. That undeniable connection that made me want to lean into his touch, to trust him with everything. But trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. "Marry me," Rowan said suddenly, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them back for days. "Not in 3 months. Now. Today. If you're my mate, my Luna, your family becomes pack family. I can grant them protection under the mate bond laws. It's the only way." I stared at him in shock. He was offering me everything. Safety for my brothers, an end to my silence, a future I'd never dared imagine. But the price was his treaty with Maria, his pack's stability, his duty to his people. And if I married him before the curse was broken, before my brothers were human again, he'd be binding himself to a mute Luna who couldn't rule beside him, couldn't speak in councils, couldn't do any of the things a Luna was supposed to do. I pulled away from his touch and shook my head firmly. Why not? Frustration bled through his carefully controlled expression. I'm offering you protection. I'm offering you everything. Because you'll hate me, I thought. Because this treaty matters more than you're admitting. Because in 3 months, you were supposed to have a proper Luna, and instead, you'd be stuck with damaged, a broken me. I couldn't condemn him to that choice. I couldn't let him sacrifice everything for a mate bond he didn't ask for, so I did the only thing I could. I turned and ran, leaving him standing alone in the library, with his impossible offer hanging in the air between us. That night, I worked on the shirt with desperate intensity, my fingers flying across the thornweed fibers despite the burning pain. 3 more days. Just 3 more days, and the 6th shirt would be complete. 3 more days and I could break the curse, give my brothers their human forms back, and disappear before Rowan could make any more devastating offers. But fate, it seemed, had one final cruelty planned. The scream that tore through the castle the next morning brought everyone running. I followed the crowd to the great hall and felt my blood turn to ice. Mireia stood in the center of the room, her emerald gown torn and bloody, her auburn hair wild around her face. At her feet lay one of my brothers, Evander, the youngest, collapsed in his wolf form with an arrow protruding from his side. "Rogue attack!" Mireia announced, her voice shaking with what sounded like fear, but felt like calculation. "This beast attacked me in the gardens. I barely escaped." She turned to Rowan, who'd appeared from his chambers with deadly speed. "You were right to be concerned about the rogues in the borderlands. They're not harmless. They're a threat." Every eye in the hall turned to Rowan, waiting for his judgment, and I knew, with horrible certainty, that my time had just run out. Chapter 7. The Breaking Point. I shoved through the crowd before conscious thought could stop me, falling to my knees beside Evander's bleeding body. His wolf eyes found mine, filled with pain and confusion, and I pressed my hands to his fur, trying desperately to assess the wound. The arrow had struck deep, close to his heart. He was dying. Around me, the great hall erupted in chaos. Guards moved forward to restrain me. Servants gasped and whispered. Mireia's voice rose above it all, demanding justice for the attack, insisting the rogue wolves be hunted down and eliminated. But I heard none of it. My entire focus was on Evander's labored breathing, the blood seeping between my fingers, the desperate knowledge that if he died before I finished the curse, I'd lose him forever. "Seize that girl," Mireia commanded. "She's clearly in league with these beasts. She's a traitor to the pack." Hands grabbed my shoulders, trying to pull me away, but I fought with strength I didn't know I possessed. Evander whimpered, a heartbreaking sound from a creature that should have been a 17-year-old boy. My little brother. The one who used to pick wildflowers for me. The one who'd been transformed at 12 years old and spent his adolescence trapped in fur and fang. "Stop!" Rowan's voice cut through the chaos like a blade, his alpha authority making everyone freeze. He crossed the hall in 3 strides and knelt beside me, his hands joining mine in Evander's blood-soaked fur. "This wolf is under my protection," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "As are the others in his pack." Mireia's face twisted with rage. "What? Rowan, you can't be serious. This beast attacked me." "Did it?" Rowan's silver eyes fixed on his betrothed with unsettling intensity. "Because I'm finding it hard to believe a rogue wolf could get close enough to attack the daughter of the Bloodwillow Alpha. Your training should have allowed you to scent danger long before it reached striking distance." Color rose in Mireia's cheeks. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm questioning the circumstances," Rowan said evenly, "and exercising my authority as Alpha to grant protection where I see fit." He turned back to me, his hand covering mine where it pressed against Evander's wound. "The healer. Where is she?" The pack healer pushed through the crowd, her weathered face creased with concern. She knelt beside us, examining the arrow with practiced efficiency. "He's lost too much blood. Without treatment, he'll be dead within the hour." Her eyes met mine, understanding flickering in their depths. "I can try to save him, but he needs to be in human form for proper healing. Can he shift?" I shook my head desperately, tears streaming down my face. The healer's expression grew grim. "Then I can't promise anything." "There has to be something," Rowan said, his voice tight. "There's always something." The healer glanced at me, then back to Rowan. "The old magic. Curse-breaking. But it requires the curse holder to speak the counterspell, and everyone knows this girl is mute. What if she isn't?" Rowan's hand found my shoulder, turning me to face him. "What if the curse is the reason she can't speak? What if breaking the curse gives her voice back? I stared at him, my heart hammering. He understood. He'd pieced it together, the silence, the curse, the connection between my voice and my brother's freedom. But the sixth shirt wasn't finished. If I tried to break the curse now, incomplete, it would fail. Evander would die as a wolf, and the rest of my brothers would remain trapped forever. I shook my head frantically, trying to communicate the impossibility of what he was asking. You have to try, Rowan said, his voice dropping lower, meant only for me. Whatever it costs, whatever you're afraid will happen, you have to try, or he dies. His silver eyes held mine, and I saw something there that made my chest ache. Absolute faith. He believed I could do this. Believed I could save Evander even with the curse incomplete. Believed the mate bond between us was strong enough to bridge whatever gap remained in the magic. Speak, he commanded, his alpha authority wrapping around the word. Not forcing me, but giving me permission. Giving me strength. I looked down at Evander's failing body, at my baby brother who was running out of time. 3 months. I'd sacrificed 8 years, and I'd needed just 3 more months. But what good were 8 years of silence if Evander died because I'd been too afraid to break my own rules? I opened my mouth, felt my throat work around sounds that hadn't passed my lips in nearly a decade. The first word came out as barely a whisper, rough and broken. Evander! His wolf ears twitched. The healer gasped. Mireya's protest died on her lips, and Rowan's hand tightened on my shoulder, anchoring me. I kept going, speaking the counterspell my grandmother had taught me before the curse took hold, the ancient words that were supposed to break witch magic. My voice grew stronger with each phrase, 8 years of silence pouring out in a rush of sound and power. The air around us began to glow with silver light, magic responding to magic. Evander's wolf body started to shimmer, to shift, the curse losing its hold. But something was wrong. The magic flickered, unstable. 5 shirts complete, 1 still unfinished. The curse couldn't fully break with my work incomplete. Chapter 8. The choice Evander's transformation stalled halfway between wolf and human, his body caught in an agonizing in-between state. His screams, half animal, half human, echoed through the great hall. The silver light that had begun to break the curse flickered wildly, threatening to collapse entirely. I felt it then, the price of breaking a curse before its time. My magic, my life force, pouring out in a desperate attempt to bridge the gap left by the unfinished 6th shirt. The pain was extraordinary, like my soul was being torn in half. I would have collapsed if Rowan hadn't caught me, his arms wrapping around my waist, holding me upright. Don't stop, he commanded, his voice rough with emotion. Whatever it costs, don't stop. But I was already fading, darkness creeping in at the edges of my vision. The curse was taking everything I had to give, and it still wasn't enough. Then I felt it, another source of power, flowing into me through the mate bond. Rowan's strength, his alpha magic, joining with mine. He was anchoring me, keeping me conscious, lending me everything he had to complete the spell. Around us, the other wolves burst through the doors of the great hall. Kai, Damon, Lysander, Theron, Cassius, my 5 brothers in wolf form, drawn by the magic, by Evander's screams. They formed a circle around us, their combined energy adding to the spell. Family magic. Pack magic. The kind of power that transcended individual strength. The silver light blazed brighter, stable now, and Evander's agonized cries began to quiet. His body completed the transformation in a rush of magic and light. Where there had been a dying wolf, now lay a teenage boy, naked and gasping, but human. The arrow wound in his side looked significantly less life-threatening, now that he had a human body the healer could treat properly. But the magic didn't stop there. It spread outward, touching each of my brothers in turn. Their massive wolf bodies shimmered with silver light, and one by one, they shifted. 8 years. 8 years of curse and suffering undone in a matter of moments. When the light finally faded, 6 young men knelt around me instead of 6 wolves. Kai, silver-streaked hair falling into his eyes. Damon with his battle scars translating to human skin. Lysander, Theron, and Cassius, all staring at their human hands, like they couldn't quite believe they were real. And Evander, bleeding but alive, looking up at me with tears streaming down his face. "Celine," he whispered. My name, from his human lips. I sobbed and tried to reach for him, but my legs wouldn't hold me. Rowan caught me again, lowering us both to the floor. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with awe. "You broke the curse." The great hall was silent, every pack member staring at the impossible scene before them. 6 young men who'd been wolves moments before. A mute servant who'd spoken ancient magic. An alpha king holding his true mate while his betrothed watched with barely concealed fury. "This is dark magic," Mireya's voice cut through the shocked silence. "She's a witch. She cursed those boys and now she's pretending to save them. This is all an elaborate ruse to seduce the Alpha King and destroy our alliance." Several pack members murmured in agreement. I couldn't even muster the energy to defend myself. Rowan, however, could. He rose to his feet with predatory grace, his alpha authority filling the hall with tangible pressure. "Celine Frostmoor is my fated mate," he announced, his voice leaving no room for argument. "She's been living as a servant in this pack for 8 years, while working to break a curse that wasn't her fault. Her brothers are the legitimate sons of the Frostmoor Beta, and they are under my protection." "You can't be serious," Mireya said, her composure cracking. "We have a treaty. Our packs have an alliance. You're going to throw that away for a girl who can't even speak?" "She can speak," Rowan countered. "And she's stronger than anyone in this room, including you." He turned his back on his betrothed, the ultimate sign of dismissal, and knelt beside me again. "Celine, look at me." I forced my eyes to focus on his face. He was smiling, a real, genuine smile that transformed his usually stern features. "I, Rowan Bloodmoor, Alpha King of the Northern Packs, claim you as my mate and my Luna. Do you accept?" I stared at him, my throat tight with emotion. This was what I'd wanted, what I'd dreamed of during 8 years of silent longing. But the cost was his treaty, his alliance, his duty to his pack. "Rowan," I croaked, my voice still rough from disuse. "Mireya, the treaty was based on political convenience," he finished. "Not fate, not the mate bond. I'm choosing you, Celine. I've been choosing you since the moment we first touched, even when I was too stubborn to admit it." He cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away my tears. "So, I'll ask again. Do you accept?" My brothers, still weak from their transformations, were smiling at me through their own tears. Kai nodded encouragingly. Evander, the healer now working on his wound, gave me a thumbs up. And I realized something crucial. I'd spent 8 years sacrificing everything for my family. Maybe it was time to choose something for myself. "Yes," I whispered. "I accept." Rowan's smile widened, and then he was kissing me, claiming me in front of his entire pack. The mate bond surged between us, finally complete, finally acknowledged. It felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. When we broke apart, the great hall erupted in cheers. Not everyone was happy. Mireya stormed out with her attendants trailing behind her, and several older pack members looked troubled. But the majority of the pack seemed genuinely pleased, responding to the mate bond's rightness on an instinctive level. Chapter 9. The Reckoning. The next 3 days were chaos. Mireya declared the treaty null and void, withdrawing to Bloodwillow lands with threats of retaliation. Her father sent scathing letters about broken promises and political catastrophe. Several allied packs questioned whether Rowan was fit to lead, if he'd let a mate bond override strategic alliances. But Rowan faced it all with unwavering certainty. his hand clasped firmly in mine. We stood before the pack council together as he formally announced our mating and my acceptance as Luna. The elders questioned me extensively about the curse, about my brothers, about my years in hiding. I answered everything truthfully, my voice growing stronger with each word. Some council members remained skeptical. Others saw the value in having 6 trained warriors, my brothers, loyal to the pack through blood and gratitude. Kai, as the eldest, formally pledged service to Rowan on behalf of all the Frostmoor brothers. My transformation from servant to Luna was surreal. Overnight, I went from scrubbing floors to sleeping in the Luna's chambers, from being ignored to being greeted with deference. The other servants didn't know how to treat me. The nobles weren't sure whether to accept me. But Rowan never wavered, always at my side, always making it clear that I was his choice, and anyone who questioned it questioned him. On the 4th morning, scouts brought news that changed everything. Mireia hadn't retreated to Blood Willow lands as claimed. Instead, she'd been meeting with rival packs, building a coalition against Rowan's rule. She'd been the one to shoot Evander, hoping to force Rowan's hand in eliminating the rogue threat. When that failed, she'd decided to take his territory by force. "How many packs has she turned?" Rowan asked, his voice deadly calm as he studied the scout's report. 4 confirmed, 3 more wavering, the scout replied. "She's painting you as weak, ruled by passion instead of reason. She's saying the mate bond has compromised your judgment." Kai, standing at the council table alongside Rowan's other advisors, spoke up. "She's been planning this for months. The treaty wasn't about alliance. It was about positioning herself to take over if you showed any sign of weakness." Damon nodded agreement. "We've been tracking movement in the borderlands for weeks. Blood Willow warriors gathering supplies, storing weapons. This wasn't a spontaneous reaction to a broken betrothal. This was always her endgame." Rowan's expression hardened. "Then we prepare for war." The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of strategy meetings, supply gathering, and training. My brothers proved invaluable, their 8 years as wolves having given them intimate knowledge of every inch of the borderlands. They planned ambush points and defense positions with military precision. I found myself thrust into Luna duties I'd never been trained for, managing supplies, coordinating healers, organizing the pack's families for evacuation, if the fighting reached our territory. The mate bond helped. Through it, I could sense Rowan's confidence in me, his belief that I could handle the responsibility. The night before Mireia's coalition was expected to attack, Rowan found me on the castle balcony, staring out at the forest where I'd spent so many years in hiding. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "Regrets?" he asked quietly. "You could have been silent and safe. Now you're Luna of a pack about to go to war." I leaned back against his chest. "No regrets. Well, 1. I wish I'd trusted you sooner. Maybe we could have avoided this." "Mireia would have found another excuse," Rowan said. "This was inevitable the moment she realized she couldn't control me through the treaty." He turned me in his arms to face him. "Whatever happens tomorrow, know that choosing you was the right decision. The only decision." I kissed him, pouring 8 years of longing into that single touch. When we broke apart, his eyes had shifted to silver, his wolf rising close to the surface. "Promise me something," I whispered. "Anything. Come back alive. We just got our chance at forever. I'm not ready to lose it yet." Rowan's smile was fierce and fond. Forever sounds perfect. The battle came at dawn, Mireia's coalition striking our northern border with overwhelming force. I stood with the healer corps, ready to treat wounded, while Rowan led the defense. The mate bond kept me connected to him throughout the fighting, letting me feel his determination, his strategic thinking, his absolute certainty that he would win. The battle raged for hours. My brothers fought like the trained warriors they'd been before the curse. 8 years of frustration channeled into defending our new pack. Kai took down 3 enemy warriors single-handedly. Damon protected the healer's station with savage efficiency. Even Evander, still healing from his arrow wound, refused to stay out of the fight. As the sun reached its peak, I felt Rowan's attention shift through the bond. Mireia had entered the battlefield, cutting through his warriors to reach him directly. This was what she'd wanted all along: single combat, alpha against alpha, winner takes all. Tras Adoris. Chapter 10. Forever Begins. I couldn't stay with the healers, not while Rowan faced Mireia alone. I ran toward the center of the battlefield, my newly awakened wolf senses guiding me through the chaos. Pack warriors tried to stop me, but I used every ounce of Luna authority I'd been granted to push through. I reached the clearing just as Rowan and Mireia circled each other. Both shifted to their wolf forms. Mireia was magnificent in her wolf form, auburn fur gleaming, movements precise and deadly. But Rowan was larger, more powerful, his black wolf radiating alpha dominance. They clashed with brutal efficiency, fangs and claws tearing at fur and flesh. I wanted to intervene, to help, but this was alpha law. Single combat couldn't be interrupted without dishonoring both parties. All I could do was watch and pray through our bond. The fight was savage and quick. Mireia was skilled, but Rowan had spent years defending his territory against challenges. He anticipated her moves, countered her strikes, wore down her defenses with relentless precision. Within minutes, he had her pinned, his jaws locked around her throat in the killing position. The battlefield went silent. Every warrior stopped fighting, waiting to see if their Alpha King would show mercy or deliver justice. Through the bond, I felt Rowan's struggle. Mireia had betrayed him, attacked his pack, tried to take everything he'd built. Pack law said he had every right to end her life, but mercy had its own power. Slowly, deliberately, Rowan released his hold and stepped back. Mireia shifted to human form, gasping and bleeding, her pride in tatters. "I yield," she forced out, the words clearly painful. "The Blood Willow Pack withdraws its challenge to your rule." Rowan shifted back to human form as well, standing tall and unashamed despite his nakedness and injuries. "Take your warriors and go," he commanded, his voice carrying across the silent battlefield. "The treaty is void. Any pack that wishes to join the Bloodmoor Alliance may approach in peace. Any that wishes to remain neutral will be respected, but any that chooses aggression will face the same fate you did today." Mireia's expression twisted with hatred, but she was beaten and she knew it. Her warriors helped her from the field, the coalition dissolving as quickly as it had formed. Wolves respected strength, and Rowan had proven his beyond any doubt. The pack erupted in celebration, howls rising to the sky. I ran to Rowan, throwing my arms around him despite his blood-covered state. He caught me easily, spinning us around, his laugh pure and joyous. "We won," he said, kissing my temple. "We won, and you're safe, and we have forever ahead of us." The following weeks brought healing and rebuilding. My brothers integrated into the pack's warrior ranks, their skills and loyalty earning them respect. Kai became Rowan's second-in-command, his strategic mind invaluable. The other packs that had wavered during the conflict approached with genuine alliance offers, recognizing strength when they saw it. I grew into my role as Luna, finding that years of observing from the shadows had taught me more about pack dynamics than any formal training could have. My voice, so long silenced, became a tool for diplomacy and leadership. I mediated disputes, organized community gatherings, ensured that the pack's most vulnerable members were cared for. The mate bond with Rowan deepened daily, that connection between us feeling more natural than breathing. We learned each other's rhythms, supported each other's decisions, built the kind of partnership that made us stronger together than apart. 3 months after the battle, we held a proper mating ceremony before the entire pack. I wore silver like the moon, my brothers standing proud as honor guards, the pack's acceptance complete. Rowan spoke his vows with absolute conviction, claiming me not just as mate, but as equal, partner, Luna, and love of his life. When it was my turn, I spoke without hesitation, my voice clear and strong. 8 years ago, I lost my voice to save my family. Today, I use that voice to claim you, to choose you, to promise you forever. I am yours, Rowan Bloodmoor, as you are mine. Alpha King and Luna. Mates bound by fate and choice. Through trials and triumph, through silence and speech, through every lifetime to come. The pack howled their approval, the sound carrying through the forest and beyond, announcing to every pack in the north that the Bloodmoor Alpha had found his true mate. That night, alone in our chambers, Rowan held me close and whispered against my hair, "Tell me something." "Anything," I replied. "In all those years you were silent. Did you ever imagine this? Us?" I thought about it, about the countless nights I'd scrubbed floors and dreamed of freedom, about the moments I'd stolen glances at the Alpha King and thought he was impossibly far above me. "No," I admitted. "I imagined surviving. I imagined my brothers free. But this? Us? This was beyond anything I dared hope for." Rowan's arms tightened around me. "Good. That makes every moment even more precious." Outside our window, 6 wolves howled in harmony. My brothers, running free in their wolf forms, by choice now, no longer trapped by curse, but choosing to embrace both sides of their nature. The sound was beautiful, wild, perfect. A reminder of everything we'd overcome. I'd spent 8 years pretending to be mute to protect the people I loved. I'd sacrificed my voice, my identity, my freedom for family. But in the end, that sacrifice had led me here, to love, to purpose, to a life richer than any I could have imagined in those long years of silence. "Forever," I whispered, pressing closer to Rowan. "Forever," he agreed, kissing me with a promise that needed no words. And as the moon rose over Bloodmoor territory, casting silver light across packlands finally at peace, I knew that sometimes the hardest trials led to the most beautiful endings. My voice had been stolen by a curse, but it had been returned through love. And now, surrounded by family both blood and chosen, with my true mate beside me and endless tomorrows stretching ahead, I finally understood what it meant to be truly free. Not silent, not hidden, not afraid, just loved, just whole, just home.